Hey folks, Steve here with a special video for you today. We will be covering character creation in the tabletop role-playing game Worlds Without Number. Now, this video is going to be quite long probably, so do not be afraid of the long runtime. We're going to be covering a couple different topics in this video. First of all, we'll be talking about the system itself and where it comes from and what it's related to. We'll do probably 2 to 3 characters we'll create following the character creation process so that you can see what that looks like and follow along if you so choose. And then probably towards the tail end of the video, I'll show off some additional characters that I've made offline to kind of show other possibilities or variations of character types so you can see what kind of variety the system is able to provide in it. So you can check the description underneath here, the description section of the YouTube page, to find timestamp hyperlinks to those sections that interest you most. I also have hyperlinks to where to get the rules for the system. Probably one of the more important things to point out, and what I think is a very good strength of this system and this product from the designer Kevin Crawford, is that Worlds Without Number has a free version that contains about 90-95% of the content for the rulebook. So if you go onto DriveThruRPG, again the link is down below, you can get the PDF for free, the free edition, and the free edition has most everything. There is a paid version, and if you get a print version, either print on demand or you try to purchase a copy from wherever, that will include the content of the paid version. The paid version content is attached to the end of the book, so that if you were looking at a free edition or a paid version PDF, the page numbers will all be the same, just that extra content that you're getting for the paid version is at the end of the book. And that paid content really comes in the form of additional character options and classes, as well as a few extra rules that the game master would use for running the game. So the barrier to entry is very low, so whether you're looking to run this game or you're going to be playing in a campaign for this game system, there's really no cost to get engaged with it, to create characters, to even run this system. You don't have to pay anything, but if you're willing to go that extra bit to get the other content, you can do that. Now, Worlds Without Number is a sibling game to others that Kevin Crawford's designed. Probably the most well-known one is Stars Without Number, and yes, there is a naming convention here. There's also Cities Without Number that has most recently come out from that designer. So the idea here and how this all originated is that Kevin Crawford took a style of Dungeons and Dragons that's very popular in the old school community, known as Basic Expert D&D or BX D&D, which was a version of Dungeons and Dragons from the early 80s, which has a lot of fans because it is not super crunchy in terms of rules. It's relatively easy to play. It's easy to modify and make new things for it, and it just makes it really easy to create something new off that chassis. And what Kevin had done is he had created a sci-fi game using that chassis, and he layered on top of that a 2d6 skill system, very similar to one you would find in the sci-fi role-playing game Traveler, and it sort of created something new, something that worked very well at the table, but was space sci-fi oriented, and that was Stars Without Number, now in its revised edition. Kevin took that same sort of design, the underlying system he then created, which at this point is pretty far removed from BX D&D and far removed from Traveler in many ways. It does feel like its own distinct system, though. If you've played sort of basic D&D in the past, you'll be able to jump into this pretty easily. He adapted that to both Worlds Without Number and Cities Without Number. Cities Without Number being, again, the cyberpunk sci-fi game. that operates on the same system, the same alignment, and where we have Worlds Without Number. This is returning back to fantasy, and so has magic and all the things you might expect in a fantasy game. So it's sort of, you could see this as a competing role-playing game to that sort of BX D&D or equivalents from an old school perspective, or competing with whatever is the most modern fantasy role-playing game of your choice, whether that's Pathfinder 5th edition or some other system like RuneQuest or whatever else is out there. This sits in that. Hey, if you want to play a fantasy game, here's an option for you. And again, it's free, so you can get the PDF, you can review it, you can read it, you can check it out and see if it's something that you might be interested in. I think its strengths, just to cover that very quickly, are again, low barrier to entry, and ultimately for a new player, the requirement to learn how to play the game, by and large, you can get away with basically a page worth of rules. And in fact, there's a page in the book that is a system quick reference sheet, basically, that you can print out. And it's basically how to play the game on just a single page. So if you can hand somebody a pre-generated character, and they know what their equipment is, and they know what their character's abilities are, they can reference that single sheet and just be able to play. So it just works really well for getting people just straight up playing. The other really great thing about Kevin's systems, and this extends for Worlds Without Number and any of his games generally, is he provides a lot of great support for the game master, and that there's a lot of toolkit things in the book, even in the free edition, to help a GM run a sandbox campaign or run a campaign in general, and helps to make prep easier. And I'll say, like, with the toolkit that he has, I've been able to generate things, create adventures much more easily, and it helps my prep. And I have to say, with it being so hard to have game masters these days, anything that helps that, gives you an on-ramp to doing it, and doing it where it doesn't feel like a chore, is really great. And his game systems just have really great tool sets that you could use even if you weren't using the system. So if you just needed help, generating stuff for a fantasy campaign or putting together material for a fantasy campaign, you could still use the material from Worlds Without Number to help you create that, and then still run whatever system if you weren't running Worlds Without Number. So lots of goodness here, folks, and I realize we're 8 minutes in. That's a pretty good intro in terms of just saying, hey, what is this game? What are we talking about here? We're going to step into creating some characters, and again, if you would like to follow along, you can go to the free PDF, open that up. Everything that we're going to be doing and using to create characters in this demonstration, in this video, we'll be using the free content. So while I technically have the paid PDF open, I will not be navigating to the content that is paid. That's sort of like, I would think, you're like not ethical to show you content that you would need to pay for with screen sharing here, but we're going to use all the free stuff. So anything I show you can freely get. We're not going to use any of the more advanced character options, though when we show off characters that I've already made, some of those characters will include some of that content. I'll be sure to point that out so you understand. If you're really curious about what you may be missing out in terms of classes, we'll talk about what all classes are in the game here very shortly. But just so you can see, I have a picture here. Everything in the left-hand column are classes that come in the core rulebook's paid version. So an alternate form of casting for a mage called an invoker that uses spell points instead of Vancian magic. Yes, this game uses Vancian magic as the default. There's a skin shifter class which does shapeshifting. There's a duelist class that does what the words say there. There's a beastmaster. There's a it's called a blood priest, but it's basically just a cleric from your sort of typical D&D flavor, and then sort of a psionic character, a thought noble. So you can get those in the paid version, and then there is a supplement book called the Atlas of Ladder Earth. It's a very cool book that is a lot of setting information, additional monsters and enemies for your Worlds Without Number game. And it also includes some additional classes and sort of optional rules depending on the flavor of your campaign, things like low magic campaigns and things like that. But the additional classes there are the Accursed, which is basically a warlock analog, the Bard, the Mage Slayer, which kind of touches on, I kind of feel like it's like the Witcher a little bit, and then the Wise, which is more for low magic campaigns. It's sort of like, your wise person or your woods witch who isn't maybe super magically powerful but still has some utility skills and things around that. So there's more out there besides what's in the free stuff. If you want to go purchase the full rule book, or you want to get the supplement book, which I quite like, you can get these additional character class options that are out there. So with that, let's start talking about the characters that we're going to make. Okay, here is the Worlds Without Number character sheet. Now, this is a form-fillable PDF that you can get when you have the PDF from DriveThruRPG. There are some automated things in here that connect forms together, and in one case there's a weird glitch in one of them, but generally this should work just fine, and we'll use this and save off the character once we've made it. Again, if you want to be following along, we're going to go to the rulebook here. I'm going to open up the bookmarks, and I'm just going to navigate right here to the summary of character creation. We're going to be following along here. Now, the interesting thing with character creation in this game is that what Kevin does is he really breaks down our archetypes of character classes from other fantasy games like this, class-based games, into smaller configurable parts. So at first glance, it may seem like some of our character options are very constrained, but as you look underneath the hood, you'll find that you're a la carte, selecting abilities and features of your character that will either come together to look very much like an archetype that you would see in a game explicitly defined as like a ranger or a druid or whatever. But you get there by kind of picking what you think is most thematically important to your character, and you may end up with things that are a little bit different. So if you were to look at the bookmarks and just see class, and you see that there's 4 classes listed here: expert, mage, warrior, and adventurer. It's much more than that. I think that obfuscates the detail, because when you pick a mage, you're then picking a mage tradition, which determines what kind of mage that you're going to be, whether that's a high mage, which is like a standard like wizard type of character, or a necromancer, or an elementalist, or a healer, and all of those are distinct magic user types that you can select. And then for the expert and the warrior, their variation really comes in what focus picks you have, the foci, that are stronger than probably, like, you might be thinking, oh, those sound like feats, maybe. They're somewhat similar to feats, but they're kind of more powerful, or they take up more of your character's definition than a simple feat would from, say, a 3.5 type of D&D game, where a foci is really a significant part of your character's specialization and what they're supposed to be good at. So differentiating a warrior who's really good at close combat versus a ranged versus maybe some other specialization for that character. And same thing with the expert, which is more of a skilled character. And so things like a rogue or a social character would probably fall under the expert umbrella. And we'll talk through that as we go. So we're going to just run through this now, just to show very quickly. The summary is about 2 pages long, and you'll find yourself kind of bouncing between sections of the rulebook as you go. But what I will say is, while this might seem really complicated, It ends up going by very fast once you're used to it, but I'm going to try to go through pretty slow for this first character so that you have a chance to absorb how this works, especially if you're completely new to the hobby, um, and how some of these things are going to go. There's a couple of ground rules here. We're going to have skill, so there is that skill system, 2d6 associated skill system, rolling 2d6 and adding modifiers to it, so you get a bell curve, the beloved bell curve. Um, there's one rule: as a first level character, you can't have a skill exceed level 1, and this is a little bit weird for some people. Skills start at level 0, so you can have basically a null value, meaning you don't have the skill at all. You can have level 0 in a skill, which means that you are um, trained, but the 0 is for mathematical purposes. It just means you're not adding a bonus to the skill roll. You can do it without penalty, but you don't get bonuses. And then as you get better, you can go up to level 1, 2, 3, and then the maximum skill level is a 4. And a 4 means you're one of the best in the world at that thing. So just know that, and there are limitations on how fast you can have a level 4 skill, or a level 3 skill, or a level 2 skill. So just know that if we're going to create a character, the maximum they can be is a level 1. So if via all these different ways of adding skills to our character during character creation, we would run into a situation where it would make us a level 2, we can't do that, and we need to pick a different skill, or we need to set up our character a little bit differently to accommodate that rule. Just some ground rule stuff. So very first thing, like many old school games, is we're going to roll our 6 attributes. Now, for these example characters, and for many of the pre-generated characters I've been cooking up to use in an eventual campaign, I'm going to use the array here. And I know some folks don't like arrays because that means they can't get an 18 in the skill that they want, but I'll show you a way that you can still get an 18 with the character creation method here. But 14, 12, 11, 10, 9, 7 is the array. We would apply these to our attributes of strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And then because these are going to directly affect the attribute modifiers, we're going to kind of do that at the same time. Now know that in this game, the attribute modifiers are very shallow compared to other games. So if someone gets a low roll, they're really worried that they're going to have a -2 or a -4 or something to their modifier. In this game, it's much more shallow. So if you got really unlucky and you somehow had rolled a 3, that's a -2. If you got a 4 to 7, that's only a -1, and the 0 modifier, no modifier, range is 8 to 13, which is going to be the average for most die rolls, right? By a pretty large margin. And 14 to 17 is only a +1, and if you are fortunate enough to have an 18, then that's a +2. So you don't have +4s, you don't have +3s. It's a very relatively shallow setup, and the expectation that if you don't roll great, that doesn't mean you're going to have a crappy character. I think that's really important. I think a lot of modern games have kind of baked it into our minds that we need to have a certain set of attribute scores to be successful. In this game, you can kind of gloss over that a little bit, and they want to make sure that you have a score of 14 at the very least, and they kind of just give that to you. So don't stress too much about attributes, and I think the standard array is just fine, as you'll see. Now, when it comes to our character, what I would like to do is handle this a bit differently. What I want to do is create a truly more randomized character. And what that means for me is, I don't know what kind of character we're going to create here until we start rolling dice, basically. Now, while I could grab some physical dice, I'm going to use a dice rolling app on my phone off camera here, or off screen share, to designate some of these things so we can navigate the space. But I'm going to do this. You don't have to do this for your character if you're making one right now alongside. But I'm going to randomly designate where our attribute modifiers go. So for our strength, I'm going to roll a d6 and figure out which number in our array is going to go there. So, okay, it's got a 9 strength. So this is not a strong character, or well, average, I guess. Strength has some important impacts, not just on like combat and to hit, like you would expect, but it also affects our encumbrance and how much stuff we can hold in our person, both in our backpack, stowed, as well as this concept of readied items. So you can have as many readied items as half your strength rounded down, and readied items would include things like the armor you're wearing and the weapons you're wielding. And so we're going to have certain limitations on how much stuff we can have readied. So maybe not a fighty character, potentially. We may be looking already at maybe more of an expert or a mage. But let's see what we get for our dex. Okay, so our dex is where our 14 is going. So this could be... we could still maybe have a dexterous fighter, a dexterous warrior, or maybe we're going to pick an expert for this. For our constitution, we are going to have an 11. And for our intelligence, we're going to have a 12. And then, just by process of elimination, we don't have that much. We don't have that much more to apply here. My die rolling idea is screwing me up a little bit. Basically, we're gonna have to figure out what is our worst stat, and we'll go ahead and make this 7 our wisdom. So we're not terribly wise, if nothing else, but we are smart. So that's interesting. Actually, I'm gonna flip that. I think what I want to do, we'll make our wisdom a 10. And we'll make our charisma the 7. So we're not terribly charismatic, but we're reasonably intelligent, and we've got dexterity. So that kind of pushes me in the direction of wanting this character to be an expert character. We can leverage our dex, maybe get some additional skills to flesh this character out. But now that we've done our attributes, we're next going to look at our background. So we're going to pick a background from the list on page 11 and note down any particular details. You decide for it. We get a free skill. So this is where we start adding skills to our character. And then steps 4 and 5, there's actually an or here between 4 and 5. So you're either going to roll for the skills, or you're going to pick them based on that background. So let's take a look at the background section of the book. There's some description here. I just want to show you the list here, and there's a page. Further pages discuss these in more detail here, but you can see some examples of what we've got. So you can always come up and make your own backgrounds for a character once you see what these look like. Your campaign setting may require a different set of backgrounds that you can make that to better reflect whatever. But this is a pretty good set that covers a lot of sort of archetypes in terms of occupations or professions. And the idea here is this is the what your character did before they became an adventurer or just part of their life. So artisan, meaning you're a crafter, barbarian, a carter, meaning you transported goods, so it's kind of in a trader type of role. Courtesan, criminal, hunter, laborer, right? That might be a good catch-all for you, like, hey, you just did work, part of the working class. Now you're a proper merchant, not just a mover of goods, but you're an actual merchant. Maybe you were a noble background, nomad, peasant, physician, priest, scholar. This is always good for mages. And some of these do have synergies. So if, being let's say a mage, well, being a mage with a scholar background kind of helps create some synergies in terms of skills as well as uh, the things that would help a magic user be successful. Now, for this particular character, we could feel free to pick one. And if you have a particular character in mind, or you want to hit, certain skills or ability improvements, you can certainly try to come up with something that's going to work really well. I do like the idea of us just not knowing what kind of character we're going to be until we get there. So I'm going to roll a d20 and just see what we get. I rolled a 1. So we are an artisan. Interesting. So let's scroll down, and you can see they put several of these backgrounds to a page. But if we look at artisan, your hero was a crafter of some variety. We could be any number of things, and this is the other part that kind of matters here. You're an artisan, that's your background, but you probably want to embellish that a little bit in terms of describing, well, yeah, what did they do? Were they a weaver? Were they a shipwright? Given that we've got pretty good intelligence and dexterity, that makes me want to try to think through, maybe something that requires a little more delicate hand might make sense here. I'm not sure what fits yet, but let's see what we get. So first of all, you get the free skill, which in this case is craft 0. So on our character sheet, we're going to show that by putting craft 0, right? So we have the craft skill. We can do crafting. Now, the other thing we can do is we can say, just give me the quick skills. I'm trying to make a character fast. If we chose that, we would get trade 0 and connect 0. So it's sort of you just want to create a character very quickly. You get your free skill, you get the quick skills, and you move on. But alternatively, you can look at picking skills from the learning column, or you can do the die roll. So again, I'm going to hop over here to see that difference. So if you pick skills, you choose 2 more skills from the learning table. Exception of any, you can't pick that one. And you cannot pick entries from the growth table. So again, if we look at that for artisan, we'd basically be picking from here, picking 2. So we could pick craft twice, but which wouldn't help us because we already have craft. It just makes it more likely if you're rolling a die that you would get craft here. Connect, convince, and you can see that trade connect, these showing up on the table. We could just pick these, but I really like the other option, the third option, so to speak, which is you can roll for skills. You can roll up to 3 times, dividing up your rolls between the growth and the learning tables as you wish. On the growth table, you might get a result that's +2 physical or +2 mental, and that means you get to add points to your attributes. So this is how, for instance, you could, and I'm going to show you this on the scholar background, you could say, hey, I'm going to roll twice on the growth chart and once on the learning chart, and you have a very high chance of rolling +2 mental twice, which would enable you to take a 14 intelligence to an 18 intelligence. So just because we didn't get an 18 with the standard array doesn't mean we can't get an 18 in intelligence, but it means that we're giving up other skills to do that. So there's a opportunity cost there that helps keep the game a bit balanced. You're getting something for giving up something. So for our artisan, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to roll... this is tricky. I think I want to roll twice on the growth chart and once on the learning chart, because I do want to see if I can get an even better stat. So I'm going to roll a d6. I got a +2 on a mental, and I got exert. So I didn't get what I really wanted. I was hoping to maybe get some physical bonuses, but we still got something. So we get exert is a 0. and we get to add 2 to a mental stat, which I'm going to go ahead and put that on charisma so that we don't have any clear negatives on our character. So we're a very average person, but we're pretty dexterous, which is interesting. And then we're going to roll once on the learning chart here. And I got a 5, so we get another exert level, which is interesting. So given that, I'm trying to think through how we want this to go. If we were in a high exertion, so we're an artisan, something that takes a lot of work as an artisan, that requires maybe decent dexterity. I need to think about that. I don't know. This is where we would be putting something in here on detail. So we're not just an artisan, but maybe we were, I don't know, something high endurance. What takes a lot of high endurance? I don't know. Maybe we're a glass maker? I don't know. Something like that. You don't have to come up with that level of detail, but I think it's helpful to figure out some of these things. Helps add some flavor to your character. So we're really good at exertion, which means if we had to run or something, we're going to have longevity on exert skills, which tend to be about endurance and running a very long time, that sort of thing. So kind of interesting how that mapped out for us. Now going back to character creation, so we did that. We have our base set of skills, which many characters can end up with a variety of other skills here. The fact that we're ending up with just craft and exert means we're very concentrated, as opposed to, in some cases, a character could end up with a lot more skills. We still have the ability to get more skills, which we'll cover as we pick our class and our focus. Sometimes these also give you additional skill levels. So looking at class. So this is the interesting part here. There are experts, which are your non-combat skill-oriented character who might be really good at stealth, like a rogue, or medicine, like a doctor, or diplomacy, like a social character. We could make a mage, and I don't think I really got the stats I would want for a mage, so I'm probably not going to pick that for this character. Warriors are generally pretty good and can do a lot of different things in terms of combat, where in this game, and in this game addresses some issues with the fundamental mages get so good, why have a fighter? This game actually boosts fighters quite a bit, and they remain very useful and have a place in the party all the time quite well, and there's a lot of interesting mechanics in this game that support that. There is a concept called shock, which, as we look at different character abilities, we're going to want to keep shock in mind. Shock is a mechanic that makes combat in this game very fast, deadly, but direct, and it really gets you past those like hour-long combats that just take forever. Fights happen very quickly, and you can get through them and move on to other fun things as you go. You know, have a good combat, and then do other good things. Have more good combat, not a slog of combat with sort of bullet sponge enemies. So what shock is if you miss, depending on your weapon type and depending on the enemy's armor class, you might still do some damage, even on a miss. Sometimes shock doesn't apply. Sometimes the armor class of the enemy is too good to do shock damage. But it provides both a floor of how much damage you can do on a real hit, and it's the extra damage you can do on a miss. And that just makes things go much more quickly in combat, and reflects the idea that, hey, you know, this whole idea in a role-playing game where you're like, I rolled a hit and I miss, I rolled a hit and I miss, I rolled a hit and I miss. If you're really up close and in melee fighting people, you're inevitably going to get hurt or hit or exhausted or tired from fighting, and this just helps do that. But shock is only relevant for melee combat. So you'll start to see references to shock as we go through the foci and things. So just so you know what that means, shock is a very important component of this game and the without number system. So And then adventurers are the multi-classing, basically, in the system, where you get some benefits of one class and some benefits of another. You don't get the best abilities of that class, but this allows you to mix and match and kind of hit different character archetypes that you might be interested in playing. And so there's a huge amount of variety available in this decision, and it's really hard to articulate it without showing you more character examples. But just to speak very briefly to it, if you had, say, you could have a warrior mage, and that's your sort of spellblade character, easy, right? You could also have a warrior slash necromancer, and that's how you get sort of a Death Knight flavored character. And in fact, that's one of the examples I'll show you later in the video of a character I've already made. You can be a multidisciplinary mage, so you could be a elementalist necromancer or an elementalist healer, and that's kind of a different combination of abilities. And you can be an expert slash whatever, because you want to have greater skill utility than other characters that you might not otherwise have. So it's going to be really hard for me to kind of hit all the great potential here without examples, but just know that what you see on the tin is not just what you get. There's a lot more here that's going to be hard to illustrate in a single character generation. And just some more examples so that you understand, like if you wanted a druid, depending on the kind of druid that you're imagining in your head when I say the word druid, you might pick different partial classes. So you might create an elementalist slash beastmaster to create a druid. Or if you want to focus more on shape shifting, you might create a skin shifter beastmaster or a skin shifter elementalist to hit the flavor of druid you have in your mind. And if you want to create a character that is like, I don't know, like a ranger, you might be a warrior, or you might be an expert, depending on what do you want to focus on. What are the things that you're most interested in having? And so when I explain this to people interested in the system, I would say, like, think of the character that you can kind of do what I'm doing, which is we're going to figure out what kind of character this is along the way. But if you're sitting there saying, hey, I want to make this kind of character, can I do that? You probably can. And then it's just a matter of, like, what do you think is most important about that character archetype that you want to focus on? You got to pick your focus. So is it more important that your Aragorn analog is really good at fighting, or is it also important that they have a wide range of skills? Or is it most important for your magic user to be able to heal than it is to cast a lot of other types of magical abilities? That kind of thing is what matters here. Now, for our character, I'm going to show how this goes. You can see there's the expert. Their core abilities are right here. They get extra skill points, and they can reroll any non-combat skill check as an instant action. So basically, they have a much greater chance of succeeding in whatever skill check they're dealing with, which means if you're just a pure expert character and you're not doing the multi-class thing, whatever skills you're good at, you're going to be reasonably successful at using them most of the time. They have a standard hit dice progression. Their attack bonus is a bit slower than the fighter, the warrior rather, and then they get a couple of focus picks at start. And then what kind of expert we are really matters on what skills we invest in. So it doesn't mean we have to be a rogue, doesn't mean we have to be a thief. We can be a very scholarly, bookish type of like field medic character if we want. It's just up to what kind of things is our expertise in that governs this character. If I show you the mage, they have a lower hit dice progression where you're going to have under 6 hit points, very likely on first level. Very slow attack bonus progression, and they get not quite as many focus picks. But then if you're going to be a mage, you have to pick your mage tradition, and that's a whole sort of underneath the hood. Again, are you a necromancer? Are you a high mage? And there's pros and cons to picking either or of those characters. And then the warrior, which gets a really good hit dice progression. They have a great attack bonus progression. They get some decent focus picks, and then their class abilities are Killing Blow, which means that when you do damage on an attack, you add half your character level to damage, even to Shock, so that's super important for Shock. And then there's other foci that kind of add to that ability, which makes it so that warriors can dish out damage very, very reliably. And then you have Veteran's Luck, which allows you to basically, in a combat, once per scene, and a scene is a combat or 15 minutes of narrative, you can turn a missed attack into a hit, or you can turn an attack against you into a miss. So it's it's sort of this freebie choice here. And what's really powerful with this move is if you have abilities that allow you to do a lot of damage on one attack, and then that's used up for a while, or you do something called a snap attack, which is something you might do to like cause an instant attack before the enemy can respond, or to interrupt an enemy, you can make that snap attack hit, which means there's a lot of utility in just like instantly ending a threat or starting things off with a bang with this Veteran's Luck ability that really helps the warrior shine. So those are kind of like the broad choices. The adventurer is really just the term the game uses for being multi-classed. So you could be a partial expert, partial warrior. You could be a partial expert, partial mage, a partial mage, partial warrior, and you get different benefits. So the attack bonuses are kind of an in-between progression of the classes that you're partialing in. Your hit dice are going to be a little bit different, and then your focus picks are going to be a bit different, but you don't get the best parts of that class. So a partial expert, you get extra skill points, but you don't get the reroll of skills. The partial mage is going to get spells slower and won't be able to cast as high-level spells as a full mage would in that particular tradition. The partial warrior gets better hit dice and improved attack bonus, but they don't get the extra damage bonus or the turning a hit into a miss thing. So the partial pick here, the adventure going into partial classes, gives you some flexibility. You can do more types of things, but you're going to be not as efficient or as good in that particular area as a character that's a full whatever that is. So now we need to actually think about what kind of character this character is going to be. So I do think I'm leaning towards an expert, and so that I can show off kind of what's at least what's interesting about having an expert character versus some of the others. Okay, so I think we're gonna go ahead and do we're gonna do expert, I think, for this character. So we're just gonna mark down here that they are the expert class. We're gonna get the masterful expertise, which is the reroll skill checks. We're going to have quick learner, which is additional skill points on level up, so we can get more increases to our skills, and they get 1d6 hit points per level, modified by our constitution, which we have a 0 bonus, so that doesn't really reflect a whole lot. So that's good. Our base attack bonus is unfortunately only a 0. And, well, that's as good as we get. So we know that we're going to have more skill points over time. We also know that we're going to be able to reroll skill checks once a scene and increase the likelihood that we're going to succeed at something we're trying to do. Now we're going to choose our foci, and again, I want to point out that this is a very important choice for the character. This is not like a feat, and you're just going to get a whole bunch of these. You do get a fair number, so if we look at the progression here, we start with any focus pick that we want, one that is suitable for an expert, and that's up to the GM discretion, but is something that should be oriented to a skillful character. And then we'll get 1, 2, 3, 4 more over the life of our character, and it might be a while before we're level 7 or 10, so these first couple of focus picks are really going to determine what kind of character do we have. What can we what can we do? So when we look at the foci picks, it kind of talks through what these are like. You can pick certain things like specialist is a really good one. That makes you even better at certain skills that you want to focus in. You can see the list in the bookmarks here. Like there's a wide range of different types of things to be good at, and they often have 2 levels. So you can spend a pick, get the level 1, and then either later or in cases where you want to try to double up, you could get a level 2 in a focus, and then get all the benefits of that. And that tends to be a pretty deep commitment if you're going to spend more than 1 pick in a particular focus. And again, these drive a lot of our character capability. Now you might see this artisan one. This is for characters that are not already experts, that don't already have the craft skill. What we could do, we could take this and get even more bonuses to crafting. I don't know if this character is going to be a true blue crafting character or not. Crafting in this game does have a lot of utility because the game allows for equipment modifications, and to support equipment modifications, a character with a craft skill has to do the modifications and then has to maintain it. And there's a limit on how many mods that they can maintain. And there is money involved in resource utilization in doing that, but it's a nice bridge between normal equipment and magical equipment. And I don't know if I want to make this character an artisan. I did make an artisan mage as a pre-gen that I can show you towards the tail end of this video. So I think we're going to try to do something else. They were an artisan in their background, but that's not what they're doing today. We could be an assassin-leaning expert. We could be alert. This is a very valuable skill. Authority. We get a focus on leadership. Cultured, about making connections. Die hard to get some more hit points. There's a lot of different options here, and I can even take some of these combat-oriented ones to help make us more valuable at combat, because inevitably we're going to have combat, probably. Because without a stab skill, which is really melee, I don't like that it's called stab. There's punch, but that's unarmed, and then there's shoot, which is any ranged weapon. So you actually need to be trained in shoot or stab or punch to not suffer penalties when attacking with those types of weapons or tool or ways of trying to hurt someone. And right now, this character does not have any combat skills, which means they are really going to have a hard time in combat. Now, what's nice about Worlds Without Number is a character can still be valuable and useful while not being good at combat. Being able to solve problems is what you want your character to be able to do. So a warrior is really good at solving combat problems. A mage is really good at solving, maybe impossible problems, and that's where magic helps you, bend the rules of reality to solve a problem. But an expert's going to solve, a wider range of conventional problems. So it's not terrible that I don't have a combat skill, and in fact, I can very easily get combat skills after our first level up. After going on an adventure, we would probably be able to level up and put some skill points in there. So it's not needed, though I do like the idea of having at least one combat skill. So we could pick something like Close Combat or Deadeye that helps with ranged weapons. There's a lot of different options here, and what we want our character to be good at. We get 2. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick Polymath as one of ours, because I like that's going to be our expert pick. Polymath. And we'll go ahead and just do that at level 1. We're going to gain any one bonus skill. Any one bonus skill. I'm going to make it stab. just to get that out of the way so that we can at least hit somebody with something. But then you treat all non-combat skills, so all the rest of these non-combat skills, as at as if they were at least level 0 for purposes of skill checks, even if you lack them entirely. So what this functionally is, and I can try to write the description here, but the text size is pretty large. I don't want to try to fill that all in. We can do things like heal, knowledge checks, leadership checks, sneak checks, all without actually having the skill. It's treating them as if I did have them. And we could say this is, we were kind of maybe a well-traveled artisan, and we've seen a lot, we've done a lot, we made some glass, but hey, we had a lot of, we worked the gig economy, and we know how to do a lot of different things. That's neat. That gives our character a lot of flexibility. We can try things, and with our masterful expertise, we have a decent shot at maybe, passing some checks we wouldn't otherwise be able to pass. So this character would bring a lot of utility to a party in that, they're going to surprise their party members with the things that they may reasonably be able to do, even if they do fail some of the time. So that's one of our focus picks. And now we can pick a different one. I think, and there's a lot of options, folks, so this is always a tricky part. I should also mention that for those who are interested in playing a type of character who is not human, so a different race or species, Kevin Crawford set up the game to treat that as a focus. So if you wanted to be a dwarf, an elf, any range of different origins, and when we show the pre-gen characters of examples, there'll be plenty to show, you can pick that. It's going to give you some bonuses or some additional minor abilities that come with whatever that type of creature is, but you're giving up a focus pick for that benefit. So the game remains balanced, even in an old school context where like everybody wants to play an elf because an elf is just better than a human in some older games. Well, here it is reasonably balanced. You're giving up some capability for the sake of balance with the party to be an elf, a dwarf, whatever you're going to pick. I think what I want to do here is I'm going to make this character a deal maker. Level 1. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us trade. So I'm going to increase that to a 0. And basically with a half hour of effort, you can find a buyer or seller for any good or service that can be traded in the community, legal or otherwise. Finding a marginally possible service like an assassin willing and able to target a king or some precious ancient artifact may require an adventure. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I don't feel like that gives us enough benefit after taking polymath. I really want something that's going to give us a little bit more of a wow factor here. Something a little more interesting, given the polymath gives us coverage for some of these different skills. Oh, this is tricky. This is tough. I think what we'll do... Let's see, our dex is a +1. This is tough. I think we are going to do specialist. This is where like polymath covers a lot, but we're going to get really good at something. So we're going to pick specialist, and I want to be really good. Let's see. Do we make them sneaky? Do we make them a leader? Maybe sail. Let's make it trade. We were going to do the trade skill, but let's really lean into it really hard by making ourselves a specialist. So we're going to get trade to 0 again, only with the specialist what we're going to do is on skill checks it's 3d6 drop lowest. And that's going to help make sure that we don't use our masterful expertise, but we're always doing very well at trade, and that can help us quite a bit in terms of making money for the party, wheeling and dealing. This character might be really good in like an urban city type of campaign, right? Or maybe you're having to do a lot of wheeling and dealing, being very versatile. That can help a lot with a character. So we'll go with that. I kind of like that. This character's very much in the commerce zone, but is kind of can do a little bit of everything. So a real jack of all trades. Ah, that's it. All right. This character's name is Jack. He's a jack of all trades. That's perfect. This is great. This is exactly what I want now. Now we know who this character is. They are literally a jack of all trades. This is perfect. Okay. We picked our focus. Now, do we need... we get one additional skill of our choice to reflect our natural talent. So this is back in the character generation process here. We've picked our foci. We're not being a non-human. We're just making a human. But this is where it calls out that you can use a focus pick to be non-human. Now we get to step 9. That's pick a skill. That's just anything. We can pick anything and increase it by 1 or make it 0. I do want to be a little bit better at something, and so I think our specialist helps with our trade being 0. It kind of helps us be better at certain things. I do like the idea that we were going to go ahead and maybe increase this. I'm having struggle with the form here. Have craft be 1, and maybe we will be better at doing like weapon modifications. That may just simply be a good thing to invest in, and we can worry about increasing trade later, where our specialist makes up the fact that it's just a 0 right now. We're not a mage, so we're not going to do anything with magic, so steps 10 and 11 are around the magic choices. 12, we do maximum hit points, so you would roll. This is an old school game, so they want you to roll for your hit points at first level. I'm going to be a generous GM and say they just get max at first level. I don't care. So they're going to get 6, because we have a 1d6 hit dice. We're going to have 6 hit points. Easy peasy. Our base attack bonus, we already wrote that down. So now we're on the second page of character, which is really wrapping things up, basically. So we did our attack bonus. We can do equipment really quick. I'm going to skip over equipment. I'm going to note down our saving throws. My highlighting is all over the place for some reason. So the saving throws are down here and can be addressed very quickly. Our physical save is 16 minus our level, which is 1 minus the best of our strength or con. So that just means we're going to have a 15. You need to roll above that on a save. So if GM says, hey, you need to make a physical saving throw, you're going to roll a die and hope to roll higher than a 15. It's going to get better every level, obviously, and if your modifiers ever change over time. Evasion, we do have a +1 there, so that means we're going to have 14. Mental, that's all 0, so that will be a 15. And then luck, which is a catch-all for anything that doesn't quite fit into physical, evasion, or mental. That just comes down to pure chance, is the luck save. That's 15. Easy. Okay, so now we're going to talk about equipment. Now, there's 2 different ways to go about dealing with this. One is to roll 3d6, multiply that times 10, and that gets you silver pieces. This game uses silver pieces as the standard, not gold. So you could end up with, maybe on average 120 silver pieces to buy gear a la carte, or you go with an equipment package, and I really actually quite like the equipment packages. I find they're just very helpful in helping someone just get into the game. And we can look at the equipment packages here. So there's different options that kind of fit into some archetype and buys you enough stuff with the average amount of silver pieces to be a workable character. So you can see we could be an adventuring peasant, could be a ranger or an archer equipment package, armored warrior, roguish wanderer, whatever fits the need of your particular character, and keeping in mind that like what you start with isn't what you're going to have forever. You're eventually going to get more money. You're going to eventually you're going to get more stuff. So just what do you need to just start playing, which is probably going to be some armor, a weapon, maybe some utility pieces of equipment for stuff in your backpack, tinder boxes, torches, that sort of thing. Given that we have a sort of jack of all trades character, I do think the Gentry Wayfarer is not a bad place to start with a character. So I'm just going to start to fill that in over here. So we're wearing a buff coat, which is kind of another way of saying leather armor, in my opinion. So our armor class is 13, which means we're certainly not wanting to get up in the middle of a melee with a group of orcs or something. Probably a bad idea. We have a small shield, so there's some benefit there. Now I'll point out that this makes it 13 when being held, which really makes our armor class 14, which kind of makes the buff coat a little less relevant. But the other thing that a shield is going to be able to do is allows us to ignore the first shock per round. So if you have a shield and you're fighting in melee combat, and the opponent misses you but would do shock damage, you get to ignore the first instance of that in a combat round, which is actually very helpful. So this makes shields not just a throwaway extra armor class improvement. There's actually a tangible tactical reason to do sword and board versus dual wielding versus not having or going two-handed weapon, that kind of thing. So buff coat and a small shield, nothing crazy, but just fine. We are then also going to have a short sword in our weapons. And to validate our bonus to hit, we have a base attack bonus of 0. We can use dexterity with a short sword, as it is a lighter weapon. You might want to consider that, but our stab skill is 0. So we combine all three for our bonus to hit. Our attribute modifier, whichever we're using dex, base attack, and our skill. So unfortunately, it's only a +1. If you have a good melee fighter, warrior type of character, you could end up with something like a +3 or 4 to hit. And then we have 1d6 +1. We do still get the +1 from dex for damage. It's a melee weapon. And then for shock, it's 2 damage against an armor class of 15 or less. So if you miss, you do 2 damage as a default, but we still also get our dex bonus to that. And I'll just notate that as 2 + 1. So even on a miss, we'll do 3 damage as long as someone's armor class is less than 15, like our own. And 3 is also the minimum amount of damage that we'll ever do using our short sword. So if we have 1d6 + 1, we rolled a 1, 1 + 1 is 2, we'll still do 3 damage. That's what that shock is. So shock, again, very important to this game system in terms of the melee combat part of it. There is no shock for ranged combat. So there we go. I'm going to hop back to the equipment package on another screen here. So we captured our buff coat, and so I'm going to start putting these things under readied items as well. So buffed coat, which is actually 0 encumbrance. And then we had the small shield, which is 1 encumbrance. We have our short sword, which is 1 encumbrance. And we'll have our backpack, which is technically 1 encumbrance as well. So half of our strength rounded down is a 4. And we've got room for basically 1 more readied item. And when I look at the rest of the items that come with the Gentry Wayfarer equipment package, there's nothing else I want to add there. So we're using 3 of our 4 readied items. This means that any of these items, they're just on our person. It's not an extra action to draw our sword or to put our small shield on our forearm or whatever. Like, these are available to us, which means if we eventually pick up like a healing potion or something, we could have that strapped to our belt and have it be readied as one encumbrance, or some other item. Maybe we pick up a dagger and we want to put that dagger on our hip. We could put that dagger here under readied items and on our weapons list, and then we'd be maxed out on readied items. Then I'm going to go to the second page of the character sheet. So you can see there's things here: goals, notes, mount, stored items, projects, allies, enemies, various notes, things for magic. We've got items in our backpack. These are the other items from our package. We have 1 week worth of rations. That's 4 encumbrance. We have a water skin. That's 1 encumbrance. And we have a fine suit of clothing carried in the pack. That's 1. So when we need to, I don't know, dress up, I guess we can. We have a writing kit. Plus 20 sheets of paper. An interesting way to use that. And then we have 20 silver coins in cash. So 20 silver down here at the wealth. And that's our character. So the very last thing, and this is super important for the game, by the way, the very last thing that we're supposed to do. So our character's name is Jack, of all trades, even. We could fill in things like homeland, what their occupation is. We're very clearly a human at this point. We're level 1. The very last thing that the character generation process asks you to come up with, and this is probably the most important thing for your character, maybe more than your character sheet, the rest of your character sheet. They need a name and a goal. The goal's the most important part. Every hero needs to have a goal. When they set out adventuring, this goal might change, but your PC should always have some reasons to go out and interact with the world. Stay-at-home PCs, aloof loners, excessively prudent heroes, and those unwilling to dare greatly for their aims are rarely fun to play. And this is part of the design sort of ethos of Worlds Without Number, that it does expect you to probably be playing some form of sandbox campaign where the players, their characters, are in some fantasy world and they're going to go do stuff. They need to decide what that stuff is. It could be as mundane as just get loot, make money, and enjoy riches, very old school classical sword and sorcery fantasy aim. It could be something noble. It could be something bespoke for that character. You could do something as cheesy as looking for a long-lost relative. You could be something very, we'll say altruistic and say, you want to depose a tyrannical ruler of a region, anything like that. It just has to be a goal, something that your character can make progress against, that in absence of any other sort of adventuring goal in a game session, you can say, hey, I'd like to work on something for my character's goals. Can we do that? And give the GM some ammunition to create an adventure around your character's goals, desires, how to affect the game world. That's very important. I think some of the other games that are out there, folks don't do that, and you just sort of get put on rails to play through a story that's been pre-crafted. A campaign that is a sandbox is really around what the characters want to do, what do they think is important, and you play that out, and you work that out, and it's much more engaging of a campaign when the players are driving the story and driving the action. So giving Jack of all trades a goal would be very important. Now, because I would maybe use this as a pre-gen, I don't want to define that goal because I'm not necessarily going to be playing this character. I would want to be able to hand this character to someone else and let them dictate what are the goals of this character. So I'm going to skip over that, but you could pick just about anything, and it can be simple too. I want to tell my players who are playing in my Stars Without Number campaign that expects characters to have goals as well. It doesn't have to be complex. It can be very simple. And it can be as simple as just do good deeds, just give them that driving action. If there's a good deed to be done, your character should want to do it, and they should venture at doing that at the opportunities presented to them. Very important. So, we've created our Jack of all trades expert with a background as a artisan, maybe a glassmaker. They're a little bit good at everything. They've got some specialization in trade and crafting. and they can fight. They're not going to be terribly good at fighting, but they're going to be doing a lot of other things in support of the party and being a very flexible utility character, adding to the strength of whatever gaming group the character has found itself a part of. So that's our first character. What I'm going to do, I'm going to save this character off, and we're going to do another character. So we're going to aim to do a very different character. What I may want to do is create some kind of warrior character so you guys can see the differentiation and capability in the focus area, where this character, has a broad range of skill capability. If we picked a warrior, we'd want to be hyper combat focused and combat ability focused. That might make for a more interesting character. So let's start working on that. Okay, so in terms of creating a warrior character, what I've done, I've already applied our standard array of attributes here off camera and just set up to do something that is probably a little more stereotypical of a warrior character, where we've got higher strength, which means we're going to have more readied items. We could have alternative weapons strapped to our back or hips for different situations. Decent dex, decent con, not particularly intelligent, not super important for us. Wisdom, charisma, all basic. And we'll start from there. So we need to pick a background. Now here, for this character, what I may want to do is rather than let the dice just totally decide what we want, let's lean into something that we actively want to try to fit into. And what I'd like to do is maybe go with the Nomad background. So let's go with Nomad, and that's going to give us a ride of 0. And then we can kind of pick, what would we like. So forced to travel, find their sustenance, beast riders, or whatever variety, not of the settled folk. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. We're going to do 2 rolls on the growth table, 1 roll on the learning table. And so we'll get, okay. Alright, so we're going to go 18 strength here, which is going to be very strong. So very strong fighter. All right, very strong guy. Because we rolled a 2 and a 3 on the growth table, we got a total of +4 physical. And then we're going to roll once on the learning table, and we're going to get, okay, so we get notice, which is not one that I was hoping for, but we can roll with that. Notice and ride. So maybe looking far afield on horseback and scouting an area. They're used to doing that sort of thing, and we've got a very strong person doing that. That's cool. All right. So that's our background. Pretty decent results. I like that. We got our 18 strength. That's what we wanted. We really leaned into that. So we picked a background that would give us the opportunity to do that. We rolled some additional dice, and we got a pretty good result for focusing on strength as something that we want to make use of. Now, dex is a really good stat also for fighters to have, potentially, and there's a real pro and con to, do you want to be a dexterity warrior? Do you want to be a strength warrior? Either type needs to be good at the other thing, too, if you can. So you might have high dexterity, but if you don't have the strength to carry decent armor or weapons, you're going to be a glass cannon. And if you have high strength but low dex, you can kind of get away with doing that because the dexterity bonus you're missing out on an armor class is offset by the ability to wear heavier and heavier armor. So you can probably get away with having a high strength fighter more than dex, but it's all circumstantial. So we did that. Now we're going to pick our class. I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's just make this person a warrior. So we're going to get that veteran's luck and the killing blow, which provides extra damage. So we are making this character with intent. We want a murder machine. But now we need to pick our focus. And so as I'm just making a note here for the hit points we get, we're going to get 2 focus picks as a warrior. So we get any pick that we want, and then we get one that should be geared towards being a fighter, which should mean something resembling a combat focus. And there's a lot of options. There are a lot of great combat options. Arm Master is a good one, where we can start to build out our stab skill. We get to add our stab skill to melee damage, so that would get better. We end up dealing a lot of damage generally. Alternatively, we could do things like Assassin. We could make this character a little more sneaky like that. I almost am envisioning this character being a bit like, if I had decided to lean into Dex, we would maybe make this like a horse archer archetype kind of thing. But given with the high strength, we definitely want to make a character that's good at beating up people. So I think I like Whirlwind Assault. So this is almost leaning into like a barbarian kind of thing. So Whirlwind Assault is going to be our focus pick. Whirlwind Assault. Level 1. We're going to get Stab, so we will be good at fighting to some degree here. And we can apply, I'm not going to write it down because there's just not enough space, but the Whirlwind Assault allows us once per scene, so basically once per combat, to apply our shock damage to all foes within melee range. So this is sort of like dealing more area of effect, swinging of a sword or weapon to hurt. So I like that. And then for our other one, I kind of want to just double up on the damage. And just make ourselves quite good at what we want to be good at. So I think we're going to go with Arms Master. I just think this is a very good combination. So this gives us Stab as a bonus skill. So now we're up to Stab 1, which is as high as it can go at level 1. And we can ready a stowed melee weapon as an instant action, so we can pull something out of our backpack really well. But the main feature I like of Arms Master is that you can add your stab skill to melee damage or shock damage. And while, so our stab skill is just a 1, but that just means we get to do even more damage since it's stab 1. If it was 0, we'd be adding 0, and that would get better over time. But right away, we're already going to get even more damage. And the Killing Blow is adding more damage, so as we start to build this out, you guys are going to see just how much damage this character can dish out on a regular routine basis very easily. So we have our focus picks. That's done. We're not going to do any magic. We still get to pick one other skill. I think we are going to give it Shoot. So this character can fire a bow, but their specialization is going to be on melee. So they can fire a bow and arrow probably from horseback, but they're going to want to get into the melee of things as their primary mode of operation. You can see the skills now are Combat, Notice, and Ride. So very focused on a very particular flavor of operation. Our maximum hit points here are going to end up being 8 because it's 1d6 plus 2. Again, I'm a generous GM and will let them have full hit points. Our base attack bonus as a warrior is 1. Whoops. And so you can start to see these things are going to start to stack up. And now we need to start thinking about our equipment. And again, this is one of those situations where we're going to lean into something so that we can be dishing out damage. I'm going to take care of our saves really quick. So this is actually probably the best save we've seen for a character so far because of the 18. So 16 minus 1 minus 2 is a 13. So quite good at physical save because of the attribute being as strong as it is. This is just going to be 15, going to be 15, and 15. So really good at physical saves. So we're going to think about our equipment. Again, I'm going to leverage the equipment packages just because I think ultimately that is the easiest thing to focus on. And let's see, Armored Warrior is probably the easiest thing for us to focus on.
So let me start looking at that. Okay, so for this, we're going to have pieced armor with an AC of 14. Now, I do have the latitude to say, so when we look at this armored warrior, pieced armor, large shield, short sword, dagger, backpack, I can maybe exchange a bit of this to pick a different weapon. And I like the Whirlwind Assault. I like the Arms Master. I'm willing to change this a little bit. So let's just say we're going to have a 14 armor class. I want to show you guys the equipment tables very quickly for this. So if we exchanged maybe the dagger, the short sword, and the large shield, how much do these things cost? So we're going to look at the weapon table here. So a large shield. Where are we at here? Oh, it'd be under armor. Gosh. All right, large shield, 10 silver pieces, 10 silver pieces. So we get 10 back. Dagger, it's 3, so 13. We throw away the short sword. There's another 10. So we get 20-ish silver pieces back. What I would want to be trying to do is get, see, maybe a warhammer. I was hoping to get a two-handed weapon. We can maybe do a pike. That'd be interesting. Though maybe not quite the Nomad character I'm thinking of. Let's just go with boy, I would really like to do a war axe. Let's do that. I'm gonna allow it, if only because the equipment package doesn't have that much other stuff. So if we went out on a limb here and go with the war axe, I think that would be more interesting for this character concept, for what I want. So a war axe. The bonus to hit for this will be 2 for the strength, plus 1 attack bonus, plus the step. That's a plus 4 to hit. And the war axe, being a two-handed weapon, which I'll just two-handed so that we remember 2H. A war axe is 1d10 plus our attribute modifier, which is a 2. But because we have killing blow, so we add our level, so that's a plus 3. Now we add one more. We're also going to add one for Arms Master for our stab skill, so this is a plus 4. Our range is melee, and our shock is going to be 3 against an AC of 15, but we still get bonuses to the shock damage. So we're going to get plus 2 for our strength, and then plus 1 for our Arms Master for stab, and another plus 1 from the killing blow, because that adds to shock as well. So now, written out like this is a bit verbose, but I want to make sure we see how we get to the number that we want to get to. So we're just gonna, I'm gonna make this a very, short, wrapped up character creation here, because the encumbrance of all of this is not very much. And at a low level character, we have, this is 2 encumbrance. This is, I think, 2 encumbrance in terms of a weapon, being a two-handed weapon. So the maximum of readied items is a 9. We still have 5 left, but we're going really bare bones here. So, assuming we still have a backpack, maybe we'd have a few other items. I'm not going to go to that extent for this character, but just the exchange of some equipment for a war axe And we could easily afford this if we had rolled for money instead, so I don't feel too bad about modifying the equipment package here. This character is going to be very potent, very deadly as a Nomad. A Nomad warrior specializing in close quarters combat. When you look at what this character is capable of, right, we're giving up a lot of skills, right? We're really good at fighting, riding a horse maybe. We can notice we're highly specialized, right? We gave up on our Nomad background, right? We went for the Nomad background. We gave up adding these other skills: connect, lead, survive, trade. You know, there's these other skills we could have picked up, add more versatility to what our character is capable of doing. To focus highly on combat. This is the one-trick pony. Not to be too punny about the ride skill, but highly focused. We leaned into increasing strength to benefit our combat. We picked our foci to be oriented around combat. Everything is combat oriented with this character. And because of it, we've got this two-handed war axe that we're going to have a +4 to hit at level 1, which is pretty darn good. Our damage is 1d10 plus 4, so could potentially do 14 damage if we rolled very high. And then in terms of shock, right, even if we miss, if the opponent has hit armor class 15 or less, we're going to automatically do, is that 7? Is that really 7 damage? I think it is. My goodness. On a miss, right? So imagine for a second, for a whirlwind assault, we leap into a group of enemies, whether that's brigands, orcs, creatures, whatever, and we do shock damage to everybody in melee range. Well, we're going to eliminate basically any single hit dice creatures in this guy's way. And then even on a miss, right, or I'm sorry, on a hit, the minimum damage that we would do, so on a die roll, if we rolled a 1, plus 4 is a 5, our minimum damage is actually still a 7. So we're going to do 7 to 14 damage on a hit with this war axe. You can kind of tell that if you're familiar with basic D&D, that this character at level 1 is much, much stronger than an equivalent level 1 basic D&D character, and that's true. Characters do tend to be a bit stronger. So you can see just how potent this character is. Now, the armor class isn't very high. We could eventually buy better armor, more like full plate or something, and get closer to like 18 armor class eventually. But in the process, we'll still be a very potent melee combatant with our Whirlwind Assault, with our Arms Master. And keep in mind that our level will increase over time, which will add to damage. Our stab skill will eventually go up, maximum of 4 at level 9. Max level is 10 in the system. So you're still going to end up with a plus 14 or more bonus to damage on the die rolls on a regular basis with this character to routinely do large batches of damage on a regular basis. And that's before we ever even talk about getting modifications to this war axe. Maybe that Jack of all trades character helps his buddy out and customizes the war axe to provide bonuses to hit and damage. If we get magical war axes that do other interesting things, there's a lot of growth potential for this warrior to just be particularly deadly in combat, which is good. That's what you want a fighter, a warrior, to be good at. If they're good at combat, they are going to be routinely and reliably deadly in combat, which is great. I think we've done enough on this character to have a pretty good setup here. Again, this is a very simple, warrior. We're less focused on skills. We could pick the focus items that really help our combat ability, and I think we did that very, very well. Okay, now to wrap up this video, what I'd like to do is show you a few other characters that have been made. I realize we only made 2 characters, but we went into enough detail along the way that I think to do any more would be a bit superfluous. We didn't show the creation of a mage character, but I do have several mage characters in my already generated pre-gens that we can talk through, and you can understand a little bit more how that process works. So obviously much easier to create a warrior or a non-magical character than a magical character in just about any tabletop role-playing game, but the process to make a mage character isn't terribly different. What I do want to show are several different characters that I had come up with, that I had made. Some grew naturally out of the character generation process. Some I was going for a very particular flavor or type of character, and I wanted to see what I could put together. But I just want to show you additional sort of results of the character generation process and the way that you can combine character class with focus picks, and doing the partial class selection, the multi-classing, to end up with very differently flavored characters that can do different types of things. And you can certainly, even with just the free edition of the rules, experiment with different character builds. But I will say and remind that when you pay for the full rules, if you have the supplemental Atlas of Ladder Earth book, you get those additional character options that really blow up the potential variations of characters that you could come up with. So I want to show that here. So here I have, I created this as a pre-gen for a potential one-off, one-shot, or a campaign for new players. This is Blank, the Viper Knight, with the information being that their occupation is a Viper Knight. Viper Knight is not a distinct character class, but it is the sort of end result of mixing these different features together and evoking some kind of, thematic setting-based character. So the idea is this is a character whose background is a soldier. They're a member of a knightly order that is really into snakes, hence the Viper Knight moniker. They're a full warrior, so they get the miss to hit. They get the added add half level to damage. Their stats are decent. The best stat is a 16 in strength, and they've taken the Die Hard focus, so they get extra hit points, so they're up to 10. And then they took the Poisoner foci, which basically, and I'll just pull it up so you can see it. You could certainly do an expert thief kind of character with Poisoner, but I decided to make it a fighter, and so we get, you are a skilled Poisoner. You're capable of compounding toxins, and basically what you can do is you can apply Blade Venom as a main action. It lasts for 10 minutes or until a hit is inflicted, and you do extra damage. Your toxins inflict 2d6 damage plus level on a hit or shock with a physical save for half. And so when we look at this, that's 2d6 plus level. So what's really nice with that, so I'm sort of flavoring this as these Viper Knights use snake venom on their weapons, and because that same focus also gives benefits to saving throws related to poison, I kind of imagine this as like they let snakes bite them, they build up immunity or resistance to poisons, and then they apply the venom on their weapons to hurt their foes. And what this can do is, because that affects the first hit with a dose, a Viper Knight can use that Veteran's Luck to score a hit, almost guaranteed, on an enemy, and that enemy is going to suffer, at least with the short sword that this character starts with, 1d6 plus 2, 2d6 plus 1 added to that, so functionally 3d6 plus 3 damage, which is pretty good, right? You're gonna come face to face with maybe the leader of a orc gang or something like that, and there's the one big leader enemy. Well, you're going to get off this big attack that's going to hopefully do a lot of damage. Maybe it kills that enemy, and the rest of the gang that they're with are going to have to roll a morale check watching their leader just get torn asunder by the Viper Knight. So it's leveraging a focus to add a very particular flavor to a warrior. So we did that Nomad character. Their focus is on the Whirlwind Assault, and doing a different set of damage more consistently. This character is focused on particular spikes of damage, and as they rise in level, they're going to have more doses. They're going to do more damage with those doses, but it's going to be focused more on damage focused on a particular enemy, rather than the Whirlwind Assault, which does more widespread damage. So it's just a different selection, a different focus for that character to be good at different types of things than that other warrior that we already created. So I do kind of like this character. It's got a neat fit into a campaign setting. Maybe that Knightly Order of Snakes is related to some snake deity. You can really start to apply some more setting trappings to this character, which I quite like. And it's got a very basic set of equipment and tools, and I put some notes in here for that potential player to understand what is this character's role in the world and what are they trying to do. So very cool. Also have a stone cleric. So this is something that's a bit more of a mix-up of some free content from the free PDF. A stone cleric is a term I've come up with that is describing this dwarven character with a background of a physician, so a healer in the dwarven civilization, but is multi-classed, an adventurer of a partial elementalist and a partial healer. And so this character is focused on magic, basically. You can see they're not wearing armor, so low armor class. They do have weapons, but because we didn't put any skill points in stab or shoot, we actually suffer a -2 to our hit rolls with these weapons. So while, despite being a dwarf, they're not really going to be very useful in melee combat. Our focus pick, we only get one as a magic, as a mage multi-class character. We pick that origin of dwarf. So there is on page 311, which is still part of the free content of the book, a description of various classic races from fantasy. And so dwarves, the classical dwarf, you get craft as a bonus skill, you get increased constitution, you do lose something from your dexterity or charisma, and you can see in the dark up to 60 feet. You can see some other ones here, gnomes, goblins, elves, lizard men, that you can optionally put in if your campaign setting is more classical fantasy than the sort of weird fantasy that Worlds Without Numbers default setting assumes. So we're a classic fantasy dwarf, and our skill points are in heal, craft, notice, and magic. And magic's important for the elemental and healer abilities, so we're making sure our magic skill is reflected. I know in some settings dwarves can't use magic or whatever, but we'll say in this one dwarves can use magic just fine, because this is again a stone cleric. This is very much flavored to be a dwarf that is of a clerical nature and worshiping the earth and stones, the stone spirits and the mountain gods, that kind of thing. And what's different for a magical character like this is that they do have magical arts, and they have something called effort. So effort is a resource pool. It depends on your magic skill as well as your attribute modifiers. You end up with a certain amount of effort, and then you spend that effort to do certain skills. Sometimes you're using up an effort just for a scene, and then you get it back. Sometimes you use effort for a day, and you have to wait until the next day to get that effort restored. And sometimes you are using an effort so long as you have an effect, like a constant effect. So if I were doing something constant with my elemental effort, I'd be using 1 for the constant effect, and then I'd have 2 left over to use for other abilities at different times. Because we're multi-class, we have both an elementalist effort and a healer effort. So we have 2 different resource pools, and our different magical arts rely on those pools. So elemental resistance is an ability that means we resist extreme temperatures. Elemental sparks means we can basically do small sparks of elemental stuff. So in this case being stone, because we want all of our elementalist abilities to be stone flavored, though an elementalist can do fire, water, earth all together, having abilities in those different things. But we really want this stone cleric to be flavored for the earth element, so that's what we're going to focus on. They've got earth sight, which allows them to see through stone to a certain degree by spending effort. And then for the healer side, they have healing touch and purge ailment, which healing touch is sort of a cure light wounds. It's just you can do more of it than spending 1 cast per day in this system, and purge ailment is sort of like cure disease. So this character has some power over stone, and healing abilities, as befit a cleric maybe in any other fantasy context. And then as an elementalist caster, in this system, a quote-unquote healer magic user doesn't really cast spells. Everything they do is related to healer effort, but an elementalist, despite having these magical arts, still actually has spells, and an elementalist can pick from the elementalist spell list as well as the normal high magic spell list. So for the two spells that this character can have prepared and that they can know, we have Elemental Favor, which just affects some benefits related to stone, and then Coruscating Coffin, which is basically a renamed flavored magic missiles. And we would probably describe our magic missile as having something to do with rocks or stone. When we hit an enemy, it would be some kind of magical stone visual accompanying that. And if you're using you've got the free PDF, you can go to page 78 to look at that. You can look at page 69 to look at Coruscating Coffin to get a little bit more intel on that. So this is just a neat idea of like, can I combine character concepts to make something very, again, thematic, a dwarven healer that is very connected to the earth, and all of that. You can keep layering on more things. Now, it would be up to the player as this character levels up to keep its elemental focus on stone. So only picking the elementalist abilities that are associated to stone, but maybe you could kind of twist in that, there's fire and magma in the earth, and so you could start to pick some fire abilities as well as time goes on and you level up and get access to more things. Okay, so let's move on to the Frontier Scout Hunter Cat. So this is a character that does leverage content from the Atlas of Latter Earth, which means that there is some paid book content associated with this character, but it is really just the origin focus for being an anthropomorphic cat person, cat folk. And the Atlas does list a number of different animals if you want that kind of campaign where there's, rabbit people, cat people, dog people, bird people. Those are all options in there. And it's really just a focus pick at the end of the day. So this character I have set up to be from a setting facet of mine, the Deep Veldt, a prolonged grassland steppe area where these animal folk tend to come from or live. And this is a cat hunter, so a frontier scout used to traveling that frontier and doing hunting. It's a full expert character. You can say I've put points into dexterity. It's kind of hard to see because of that plus sign, but there's an asterisk on the dex. So this character's dexterity is 14, and its modifier is a 2. That's normally not how that works. It'd normally be a 1. But the reason why it's a 2 is the origin for catfolk. It's on page 182 of the Atlas book. Allows you to increase the dexterity modifier, not your dexterity itself, but the actual modifier is increased by 1. So we go from a +1 to a +2. So very valuable. The origin focus here also gives us claws as a natural weapon to have. And also has a thing where you have a cat frenzy where if you want to do non-lethal damage to an opponent, you actually have to roll a save to do so. That's sort of the con of being the cat person, I guess. But by and large, I'm not worried about that because we're a ranged cat. We are a dexterous cat person with a bow and arrow as our primary weapon, and our cat claws for close range melee. So this character, nothing too fancy here. They've got skills in shoot as their primary focus. They picked the sniper's eye focus, which is really, without having to get too crazy here, you are an expert at doing shooty stuff. So we're good at execution attacks, which in my mind is in alignment with a hunter. Stalking a prey, getting an execution attack, which is a way to deal like an assassination type damage level to an opponent, and that's their focus. The other sort of ranged focus in here is Deadeye, but I've decided to go with Sniper's Eye because of that execution attack. It's like
it's very hunty to me. A hunter does an execution attack. And so this is, they have the sniper's eye, and also like cat eye. There's a lot of cat eye, cat stuff here. But heal for binding wounds in the wilderness, survive for survival skills, stab for the claws, shoot. They're very good at shooting. They also have notice again. Cat, good at noticing things, good vision, that kind of thing. Acute vision for hunting, that sort of thing. And we've got a large bow. We've got our claws. And that's kind of it. Lightly armored because the dex modifier increases our armor class quite a good bit. And we've just got our bow. We've got some arrows. We're wearing a war robe, which is okay armor, but it's got high encumbrance. But given our strength isn't super great, so like we're maxed out on readied items, but still that's reasonably pretty good. And there's not much here on the back end, just other items they have in their backpack for being out and abroad. Some description. Languages, I just put in common and also meow. It knows how to meow. Meow, meow. Cat person. There you go. So something, if, animal people catch your fancy, that is a race species option. If you have the Atlas book, you can also just come up with your own, right? I mean, I don't think it's super duper special to just come up like what kind of abilities would a cat person have? What abilities would a dog person have, right? You could probably come up with just a couple of adjustments to come up with your own origin focus. Not a big deal there. So this character, pretty straightforward. We have a Death Knight. So this is one of my more entertaining character creations. I've tied this character in with sort of some background of the setting I would throw a campaign into, where this character is blank, whatever the player would want to name their character, of the dutiful dead, and they are a dutiful Death Knight. They are from the Imperial era of a region, which is from the past. Their background is a peasant. They once worked as a peasant until attaining dutiful dead status, with the story here. You're once a living peasant working the land in an undead empire. In exchange for being levied in service to that empire, after death, your family would enjoy protection and financial support. However, you've been awakened from undead stasis long after the fall of that empire. Your family is gone. All you have now is your sword and necromantic abilities. So a little bit of a story baked into this character a little bit. And they are a adventurer, meaning a multi-class character, partial warrior, partial necromancer. So they don't get all the benefits of being a warrior, and they don't get the full casting abilities of a full necromancer, but they combine both. So this is your fighter mage combination. Now, because it's level 1, they're not totally decked out in awesome stuff. They've got pieced armor. They've got a short sword. So their armor class is okay. They've got their short sword that can deal decent damage, and they can hit all right, and all of that. So that's all well and good. Their skills are in craft, exert, some of the stuff coming from their peasant background, magic, because they do cast magic, they need to be good at that, and stab, though they'll probably be putting more points into stab over time to get better with their sword. Their origin is undead. That's right, you can be an undead in this game. And in fact, the undead origin, while it is up to your GM to allow it, there is, in the free book, origin-focused undead. And so you have all the qualities of an undead creature. You can teach your allies how to successfully use healing effects on you. But you do lose some attribute points, so we have to suffer that a little bit. And then, as well, we have the qualities of being undead, which means that this character, is can avoid being poisoned, diseased, can't be made to fall asleep or fall unconscious, doesn't need to eat or drink. So the benefits, there's a slight penalty for being undead that gets baked into our stats, but the fact that we don't have to eat or sleep or worry about poison, that is a huge boon to this character. Now they're giving up a focus, which means we're not doing Whirlwind Assault, we're not doing Arms Master. There's other benefits, other focus picks we could have selected. But with the undead, we leaned into a particular type of character, and we've got some cool utility things like when the party needs to camp, who's on watch? The undead, who can just stand there and wait and be restful, but not actually be sleeping, and can be maintaining some level of awareness. That's cool. We've also selected the Armored Magic focus, which I'll just bring that up as well. At first level, because that's all we really need, it allows us to cast spells while wearing armor with an encumbrance less than or equal to 2. It's kind of my shorthand here, not the best way to describe it, but I only have so much room here. So we're wearing pieced armor, that's 2 encumbrance. So at Armored Magic Focus Level 1, we can cast our necromantic spells wearing this armor. Eventually, we'll probably want to spend another focus on getting to level 2, where we can cast spells wearing armor of any encumbrance, so that we can eventually upgrade into like plate armor and still be able to cast our spells. So again, we have to spend focus picks, and you don't get very many of those, in order to have this sort of flexibility, this kind of niche character feature for having the armored magic. And we'd also probably want to upgrade our weapon from a short sword to something else like a long sword. Again, at level 1, you pick one of these starting packages. There's only so many items you can afford, but certainly places for growth. Now, the necromancer part of this, we get effort, and I described effort earlier. So we have 3 effort resources that we can be spending. We're not going to get as many magical arts or spells as a full necromancer, but at level 1, this character has Bone Talker, which allows them to talk to undead. So if you come across another skeleton or something along those lines, this creature or this character can just talk to that undead. So not a huge benefit, but just something more for flavor. But then for actual spells, this Death Knight has 2 prepared spells, can cast 1 per day, and we have Command the Dead or Query the Skull. You can look these up on page 84. Query the Skull allows you to talk to the dead. This is very much like the Talk to Dead spells of other role-playing games. And Command the Dead, which allows us to take control of other undead. So you start to get into that, like Death Knight leading a small band of other undead servants, and that sort of thing. And as this character grows in strength, they'll get access to other necromantic spells and abilities, combined with the reasonable fighting capability. And maybe at some point we also put some foci, some focus picks into more of those martial things like Arms Master or Close Combatant or Whirlwind Assault or something like that. But at the beginning of this character's career, they're just starting in this sort of, not quite full-powered state, like any character. But I do like this one, that Death Knight concept that is kind of popular, and you can still make this Death Knight character, like, they're not evil. This game doesn't have alignment, by the way, so it's really just about your character's values, what they do. Being undead might not be great, and some people may look upon this character as an abomination, but it doesn't mean they can't do good things. But a neat little flavor there for this character. I quite like it a lot. Here, this character is a confidence person, a con man, a con woman, con person, confidence person. This is another expert variation. This one's pretty straightforward, but it is a very kind of different flavor to some of the other experts that we've already looked at. So the idea, this is a human. You've got a criminal background, which is affecting the skills that we got, and we do get the full expert re-rolling of skills, extra skill points. Our best attributes are Dex and Charisma, so we did the rolling on attributes and managed to increase. So we have decent Dex and decent Charisma. And with this character, unfortunately they have a really bad strength. So they're all about talking as best that they can. It means they're not going to be terribly great at fighting, all things considered. And in fact, this was a mistake. That should be... Oh no, they're using Dex. Never mind. Because they have a decent Dex, they can still fight okay with a short sword, because a short sword can use dexterity. They have throwing blades. Unfortunately, they don't have a shoot skill, so ranged is actually a penalty offset by their dexterity. And then for the focus picks here, we went with cultured and imposter. So the idea there is They're more skill-oriented as a social character to persuade people or trick people. So we have skills in sneak, stab, connect, and convince. So connect means we can use our skills to make contacts and get a support network established wherever we're at. And of course, convince will raise up over time to persuade people to do the things we want them to do. Cultured means that we will have all the common languages of the region that we're in, and we can pick 2 other esoteric languages to know. And I'm leaving that up to the player when we hand out the pre-gens. So the idea is you're a widely traveled criminal. You're quite good at adapting to your surroundings and making connections. And because of the imposter focus, quite good at masquerading as a different persona with disguises and all of that. So here are those focus picks. You can see here you gain connect, fluently speak all the common languages, so on and so forth. You can get minor favors from NPCs. That's good. And then the imposter is you get performer sneak, and you can reroll skill checks around maintaining an imposture or disguise. You can create false identity, and so on. So this character is sneaky, like a rogue thief character, but leans into a more social role. And so as support of a party, can still be involved in combat, can still help out, but is going to be doing things out of combat to support the goals of the party, to do things, to be sneaky, to be getting them through the front door of a place they might not ordinarily be allowed into, that sort of thing, and that makes for a fun character concept, I think. And lastly, we have this artisan mage. So this goes back to my commentary about crafting. This is a pretty standard high mage. So this character is a scholar. So this helped them get their 18 intelligence, which is quite good. They are a high mage, so your sort of standard wizard archetype. And then you can see the skills are in convince, craft, know, and magic. They took artisan as their sole focus. So this allows them to be good at crafting and to do weapon and equipment modifications without being an expert. That's why the artisan pick is there, for folks that are not already experts to do this sort of thing. It also gives them bonuses for modifications. And so the magical arts, so we have effort, once again, to be used more frequently than spells, that this character can do sense magic, which does what you would expect, counter magic, and you can read about that on page 67. And then its spells, we have 4 known, 3 prepared, only 1 cast per day. And so we have magic missile, we have sleep, we have charm, and invisible, all at level 1. We can only do 1 of these a day, and we have to pick of the 3 which one of these are going to be in our selection. So the way magic works in the system, you can know a lot of spells, you can prepare only a certain number per day, and then you can only cast so many per day. So I could say I'm going to leave invisible straight out for today. I don't expect to use it. And at any point I can decide to do a magic missile, a sleep, or a charm. But once I do, that's it for the day. And so you do lean on magical arts to be your more frequent magical thing that you're doing, and the actual spells that are quite potent at times being more rare to execute here. So I have it, you're a nascent mage in the high magic tradition. You have an interest in applying magical improvements to weapons, armor, and other baubles. With suitable arcane salvage and enough coin from your allies, you can modify their equipment with improvements. So kind of a more straightforward character. This is much more in the typical archetype you'd expect from a mage, with the one specialization being I'd like this character to lean into crafting. And that, again, starts with modifications, can eventually be brewing elixirs, creating scrolls, and other stuff like that. Certainly up this character's alley. So this video is now quite long, and I think we've covered everything that I would want to cover here for this video. We've looked at a lot of different things, right? We've looked at what this game even is, if you didn't already know about it. We've gone through the character creation process and what that entails, and it's not terribly complicated, if maybe a little more involved than a lot of old school games, but not terribly as complex as maybe some other newer school games. And we looked at some other types of characters that you might run into with this system. And there's a lot of things that we could have done. We could have had our Nomad character be intermixed with Beastmaster from the paid content and added something to where that character's mount, it's, for their ride skill, was actually their animal companion. And maybe it was a horse, or maybe it was a different type of creature. And that Nomad's abilities were intermixed with the ability to do animal companion stuff. That's kind of the fun of the Beastmaster. There's a lot of variations you can mix and match different features to do lots of different things. There's a lot of potential to make characters that feel distinct, and mix and match these different pieces to get what you want. And in general, it's a pretty solid system just to play. So again, I point you to the free PDF if you'd like to read more, if you haven't already done so. I think the paid version's totally worth it. I think it's a really good game. Hopefully this is enough to get you familiar with it, interested if anything else. And if you're looking to be playing this game, I've hopefully equipped you with enough of a walkthrough that you can create your own character and hit the kind of thing that you want to be able to do with that character. Again, there's so much more I could have shown if I was able to show the paid content on the screen share. I don't think I can do that, but just know that the character options expand from there. So anyway, hope this was enjoyable. Hope this was educational. I appreciate if you watched the whole thing. Again, check the timestamps if you need to go back, and we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.